and you rattle it around and hope for the best and build up a story. I don't know, it's got to start with something.
When I was 7, my mother decided I should go to a proper boys' school. It was called Llandaff Cathedral School, and it stood right under the shadow of the cathedral. The sweet shop at Llandaff was the very centre of our lives. To us, it was what a bar is to a drunk or a church to a bishop. Without it, there would have been little to live for. But it had one terrible drawback, this sweet shop. The woman who owned it was a horror.
I've forgotten for the moment what the horrible woman in the shop was, but they were...
Mrs. Pratchett.
Oh, she was Mrs. Pratchett, that's right, yes.
She never welcomed us when we went in. And the only time she spoke were when she said things like, "I'm watching you, so keep your thieving fingers off them chocolates."
And I think it was in the school camp days. It's very nice because it's a sort of early version of a lot of things that happen in the books later, you know, these ingenuities. Some kind of suitable revenge goes on, which is very nice.
My 4 friends and I had come across a loose floorboard at the back of the classroom. One day, we lifted up and found a dead mouse. It was an exciting discovery. "Hold on a tick," I said. "Why don't we slip it into one of Mrs. Pratchett's jars of sweets? Then, when she puts her dirty hand in to grab a handful, she'll grab a stinky dead mouse instead."
When you're old enough and experienced enough to be a competent writer, by then you become pompous and adult, grown up, and you've lost all your jokiness. You don't have any and so unless you are a kind of undeveloped adult, and you still have an enormous amount of childishness in you, and you giggle at funny stories and jokes and things, I don't think you can do it.
The 5 of us left school and headed for the sweet shop. We were tremendously jazzed up. We felt like a gang of desperados setting out to rob a train. We were the victors now, and Mrs. Pratchett was the victim. She stood behind the counter, and her small, malignant pig eyes watched us suspiciously. When I saw Mrs. Pratchett turn her head away for a couple of seconds, I lifted the heavy glass lid of the gobstopper jar and dropped the mouse in.
Well, I think Roald thought they got away with it, but in fact, of course, he hadn't.
The consequences, of course, hit hard.
We didn't speak as we made our way down the long corridor into the headmaster's dreaded study. He raised the cane high above his shoulder, and as he brought it down, it made a loud swishing sound, and there was a crack, like a pistol shot, as it struck Thwaite's bottom. "Harder! Harder!" shrieked her voice from over in the corner. We looked around, and there was the loathsome figure of Mrs. Pratchett. "Lay into 'em!"
You could hear your fellow friends being caned, and you knew you were next. I mean, that's pretty tough. I think it affected him a lot. And of course it went through a lot of his children's literature.
Vicious people are much more interesting than nice, good people. There's nothing more boring than a totally good person. They've got to have quirks and bad habits and things like that. You can have a nice one as well, chucked in there, but if you had a book full of nothing but nice people, it'd be awfully boring.
It's like a war, Matilda said. You're darn right it's like a war, Hortensia cried. And the casualties are terrific. We are the Crusaders, the gallant army fighting for our lives with hardly any weapons at all. And the Trunchbull is the prince of darkness, the foul serpent, the fiery dragon with all the weapons at her command.
Mrs. Trunchbull in the movie is very, very like the Mrs. Trunchbull in the book. She's larger-than-life, grotesque adult who absolutely hates children and finds them the most revolting things in the world. Her way of punishing them is rather different, however, to the norm. She likes to whirl them around, you know, her head and throw them out the window.
I've never liked authority. I've never got on very well in institutions. Always difficult, but it's wrong, of course, to be like that, because you couldn't run schools and institutions like that if everyone was like that. There shouldn't be too many rebels around. There shouldn't be.
But you are one.
Well, yes, but you get much mellower as you get older, you know. I'm still a rebel.